It's one of gaming's oldest stories, and probably its most famous one. Princess Peach is kidnapped by someone or something evil, usually Bowser, and Mario has to come to her rescue. It's a classic example of a damsel in distress. Bowser and Peach are literally the exemplary image on TV tropes. It's a cliché in storytelling that has existed for centuries, since ancient Greece, but has definitely fallen out of fashion in recent times. After all, the idea that women are helpless and have to be saved by some heroic man instead of being capable of fending for themselves does feel like it belongs in a different time. For example, The Legend of Zelda, which also started out with Princess Zelda in the helpless damsel role, has been subverting it for a while now, with Zelda having an active role in the fight against evil ever since Ocarina of Time. And while the recent Tears of the Kingdom does make her a goal to be chased, it's not about rescuing her, it's about finding her. The Mario series first started deviating from the trope with Princess Daisy, who was originally a simple damsel in Super Mario Land but evolved to be a tougher, tomboyish character in the Mario sports games. Another example is Pauline, who was Nintendo's first ever damsel in distress in Donkey Kong but relatively recently returned as mayor of New Donk City, in Mario Odyssey of course. It shows Nintendo was actively looking to shed the skin of the damsel in distress, but when we talk about Princess Peach, we're looking at the spokeswoman of the trope. For years, it was basically her entire character arc, with little more describing the character of Peach. But I feel that sentiment is changing. And not just because this trope has become criticized, I believe there's more behind it. We may very well be heading towards a future where Peach will never get kidnapped again. Let me explain. We begin with a quick crash course on the history of Princess Peach as a damsel in distress, specifically focusing on the times she wasn't. That's the angle we're using here, after all. Peach's first playable appearance was in Super Mario Bros. 2 on the NES, all the way back in 1988. Now, that may sound like it destroys my entire argument, seeing as it means Peach took on the role of heroine in only her second ever appearance, but that's not entirely accurate. Unless this is the first video you've ever watched on the Mario series, I'm sure you're familiar with the story of Mario Bros. 2 being a reskin of the Japanese exclusive Doki Doki Panic. This also means Peach, still called Princess Toadstool at the time, is simply a reskin of the character Lina from the original game. And more importantly, it also means the developers didn't design the game with the idea of making Peach a heroine or to deviate from the damsel trope. She was simply the best fitting Mario character during a time where barely any characters existed in the series. This is further indicated by Peach remaining in the damsel in distress role in the main series for a whopping 25 years after this. It wasn't until 2013 and Super Mario 3D World that Peach would become not only playable again, but just in general would have any agency within the story of the Mario games. But this game did mark a change in how the Mario developers began seeing Peach. On the Switch, she has of course also been playable in Super Mario Bros. Wonder, as well as in an odd way in the port of New Super Mario Bros. U, with the whole Peachette thing. Now, what do all those games have in common? Multiplayer. I think a clear pattern has been emerging, with Nintendo not only experimenting with turning certain assets of the Super Mario franchise into party platformers, but with specifically ensuring players have the option to pick female characters if they want. And what better character to fulfill that purpose than Princess Peach, one of the most iconic women in gaming. But of course, Peach can be in a cage in Bowser's castle and fight him simultaneously, so new characters were created to fulfill that role, like the Sprixies and the Poplins found in the Flower Kingdom. I don't know about you, but I would say it's basically a given that multiplayer will remain as a staple of the 2D Mario games going forward, and I really don't see Nintendo changing their mind on giving players the opportunity to play with female characters either. They introduced Daisy, Toadette, and Rosalina as playable characters too. This is definitely something they want to keep supporting, and rightly so. But that also means that we may have already seen the last time Peach has ever been kidnapped in a 2D Mario game. But there is more to the series than just Mario Bros. What about the 3D games, for example? Multiplayer is definitely not a given there, so it's not like Peach is needed elsewhere. And it is true that the most recent game in this vein, Mario Odyssey, does feature Peach in the role of damsel. But there is one core difference compared to games like Galaxy or Sunshine. Agency. At the end of Odyssey, Peach snubs not only Bowser, but also Mario when they confess their love, and decides to tour around the world with her new pal Tiara. It's the first time the Super Mario series ever subverts the trope without making Peach playable, once again showing Nintendo is looking to shed that skin from the character. The movie also follows the same pattern, She does get kidnapped by Bowser, but you cannot tell me this modern version of Peach, if you will, is defined by her role as damsel. No, she's a woman that gets kidnapped, just like how Mario is a man that gets kidnapped in Luigi's Mansion. She still has her own agency and independence within these stories. These newfound, or maybe rather reinvented character traits are definitely here to stay, I think, with Princess Peach Showtime making that all the more clear. There is now a market for Peach as a cool heroine, or maybe there always was and Nintendo are just now seeing it. Either way, it does significantly slim the chances of Peach returning in her traditional role, even in the 3D games. I'm not saying whatever 3D Mario game is coming on Switch 2 will 100% not feature Peach being kidnapped as its story, but I do think there is a very solid chance it will focus on something else instead. Just look at Bowser's Fury, for example. Peach doesn't even appear in that. Same for the movies. I would genuinely be shocked if the second Mario movie features Peach getting kidnapped again. But I will admit, there is one element of the Mario series that I can say with confidence will never feature Peach in her damsel role again. And that is, ironically enough, the various RPG side series. Now, I say ironically because some of these games have actually embraced Peach as a playable character for much longer than the main series has, and have been the main source of Peach's character traits throughout most of Mario's history. She was playable as early as Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, although that game does begin with her getting kidnapped still. The same applies to Super Paper Mario, which does subvert the trope by having Luigi and Bowser also kidnapped at the same time as her. However, as you can probably tell, that means only 2 RPG games out of a total of 12 feature Peach as playable character, with even those 2 not entirely freeing her from her traditional role. And seeing as even the most recent entry on the Switch, Origami King, does not subvert the trend, I must conclude that it's still a definite possibility for Paper Mario or other future Mario RPGs to feature Peach as damsel in distress. Origami King does play with the trope a little though, as Peach is not the sole victim of it, merely the one with the highest profile. Origami King also released in 2020, meaning it predates what I would consider the true reinvention of Peach. That may have started with 3D World, and Mario Bros. U Deluxe definitely showed it was intentional, but it really kicked into high gear with the trio of the Mario movie, Mario Wonder and Princess Peach Showtime. That said, as I mentioned earlier, it cannot be considered a given, based on the history of the Mario RPG series, and seeing as multiplayer has never appeared in any of these games and multiple playable characters are rather rare, that won't stop Peach from getting kidnapped either. Finally, I want to briefly touch on the other side of the Mario series that could potentially feature Peach in the damsel role, starting with the sports games. Now, you'd almost forget it with how barren the Switch titles have been in this aspect, but these games used to have narratives, and sometimes story modes, albeit flimsy ones. That said, history speaks in my favor here, as the amount of times these titles have featured Peach as damsel is a big fat zero. With how multiplayer focused these games are, I think chances of Peach being kidnapped here are very slim. Then there's Luigi's Mansion, where she falls victim to kidnapping of the sorts in the third entry. Now, it is important to note she is not a damsel in distress in this game, she is simply one of several characters turned into paintings. The game is never about rescuing the princess, it's about saving Luigi's friends. And since that is exactly the relationship Peach has with Luigi, I think it's very unlikely she'll ever portray the role of damsel in distress in one of his games. Daisy or even Mario are much more likely. That said, Peach being kidnapped outright is definitely a possibility, perhaps even likely to happen again. So yeah, looking at the future of the Mario series, with the Switch 2 and a new generation on the horizon, I think Peach, her future is looking very bright. While I can't say for certain she will never get kidnapped again, I do feel confident she has at least left the trope of damsel in distress behind, if she hadn't already. Nintendo seems adamant to take her out of Bowser's cage and make her own character, and I applaud it. Not only does it speak to an audience of gamers that have been underserved, tailored experiences for years on end, it also gives Peach a level of characterization that has been severely lacking in the main series games. The RPG games always did this, but the level of storytelling is so different between those games and the main series platformers that I don't blame Nintendo for trying to find a simpler way to give Peach her agency and independence. They found a nice place for her, I think, and I'm very excited to see what they do with her next. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed hearing me talk about Mario, please consider liking this video and subscribing. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.